Hello there everybody and welcome to the channel. So imagine with me, if you will, that you're listening to someone tell you a story. A brilliant, intelligent, and wonderfully crafted story. One that spans centuries and is filled with tons of unique characters and conflicts. Then, all of a sudden, the storyteller gets whisked away, never to be seen again. Which means that you never get a conclusion to the story that you were being told. You don't get an ending for the characters in the story. That's kind of what it feels like to be an Expanded Universe fan after Disney decided to decanonize it. The Expanded Universe officially ended on April 25th, 2014, and since then we haven't really gotten a continuation for the unfinished stories in the Expanded Universe. Yeah, there's been the occasional comic, and Star Wars The Old Republic is still going strong, but a lot of stories were left unfinished, leaving many unanswered questions. So in today's video, I wanted to go over 5 unanswered questions in the Expanded Universe. Now I know there are a lot more than 5. However, I wanted to be able to spend time talking about each one. I'll be explaining each question, giving some background, and attempting to give an answer for some of them. So starting off, we have, what happened to Alana Solo and the Throne of Balance? Alright, so for a little bit of backstory for those of you who may not know, Alana Solo is the granddaughter of Han and Leia Solo. She's the daughter of 2 incredibly powerful Jedi, Tenel Ka and Jacen Solo, and she was being set up to take on an important role in the upcoming years. What role, you may ask? Well, during Legacy of the Force and the Fate of the Jedi novels, several characters, both Sith and Jedi, received visions of her sitting on a white throne, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy. In the vision, Alana was ruling during a time of peace. Now, there are several theories about what this vision means. Theories from characters both in the novels who saw the visions and theories amongst fans. Some people believe that Alana was going to take the Father's place and sit on a physical throne of balance, while others, such as the throne's creator, Troy Denning, believed that it, being the throne of balance, was not a physical throne, more of a mythic symbol that wasn't meant to be taken too literally. Another thing to consider was the fact that Alana Solo was princess to the Hapes Consortium and destined to rule 130 star systems, so this could just mean that she was going to rule Hapes during a time of peace. On the other hand, Troy Denning has also stated that she was going to have a role potentially taking Anakin's place as the Chosen One, and if you remember watching the Clone Wars, Anakin was supposed to take the Father's place, so there doesn't seem to be a clear answer beyond speculation. So other than theories, we don't really know. Unfortunately, when the Expanded Universe came to a close, Alana was only 9 years old, so we didn't get to see her story progress too far. Next on our list is what happened in between the events of The Force Unleashed 2 and A New Hope. So as many of you know, The Force Unleashed 2 ended on a cliffhanger. The Rebel Alliance had captured Darth Vader and were flying away. Obviously, we know that Vader didn't stay captured. He somehow escaped so that he could be in the original trilogy. But because there wasn't a third game, we don't know how he escaped. There are also several characters who are alive in The Force Unleashed 2 who aren't alive in the original trilogy. Characters such as Starkiller, Rom Koda, and Juno Eclipse. So what happened to them? How did they die? We don't know. We can, however, speculate what may have happened based on some of what Sam Witwer has said about the game. Sam Witwer has stated that the game would have involved Darth Vader and Starkiller being shot down on a planet by Boba Fett. They would have to work together to survive attacks from Boba Fett, who had been sent by the Emperor to try to stop both of them from getting off planet. Sam Witwer has also stated that it would have been revealed that Vader may have been faking some of what happened in the previous 2 games, and may have in fact been stronger than we believed. Here's a quote from him. At the end of The Force Unleashed, he cuts off Vader's hand and captures him. The idea was that this was the biggest mistake ever, and that Vader, like he was toying with Luke, that The Force Unleashed 1 and 2 games were all about toying with Starkiller, and that at some point there would be a confrontation where Starkiller's fighting Vader, and everything that worked before is not working now. He's like, but I cut off your hand. And he's like, that wasn't my hand. I have no hand. Starkiller's fighting Vader, and he's like, how are you doing this? And Vader simply answers with, I am Lord Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. Starkiller is no match for this guy, which would have been really cool to see. But the fact still remains that there are a lot of unanswered questions because this game wasn't made. The third unanswered question is, why did Darth Crate not attack between Crucible and Legacy? Also, what happened in between Crucible and Legacy in general? So I understand that this question may have been a bit confusing for some of you, so let me break it down. Star Wars Legacy is a comic series that first came out in 2006. It takes place approximately 137 years after the Battle of Yavin. Volume 1 is an amazing story that follows Cade Skywalker, a descendant of Luke Skywalker, and the battle between that generation and the new Sith Order, which is led by the one Sith, Darth Crate. Darth Crate invades the galaxy in the first issue. Now interestingly, his Sith Order had been in hiding for over 100 years. The Order was started shortly before 27 ABY. However, rather than attack right away, they waited, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the galaxy to become weak so they could invade. Which begs the question, why did they wait 100 years while the galaxy was incredibly weak much earlier? In Legacy, he talks about the history of the galaxy and events that weaken the galaxy, such as the Yuuzhan Vong invasion and Jacen Solo's turn to the dark side. He came out of hiding for a little bit in Fate of the Jedi to assist Luke, who was battling one of Abeloth's avatars. He told Luke that the time for their attack was not now, and then he disappeared and reappeared 100 years later, where they finally invaded. So what happened? Why did he wait that long to attack? Was the galaxy not weak enough for him to invade? The galaxy is in a pretty bad spot after the events of Apocalypse. The Galactic Alliance is in shambles and the general population seems to hate the Jedi. It seems like the perfect time to invade the galaxy. Did he not have enough Sith to invade? Was Luke Skywalker and the next generation of Jedi too powerful? We don't know. We don't know why he waited so long. I fully believe that we would have gotten stories that filled this gap and explained why he was in hiding for so long. The next question on our list is, what happened to the lost tribe of the Sith? So during the events of the last novel, which takes place in 45 ABY, there was an entire planet full of Sith who were still alive and needed to be dealt with. The lost tribe of the Sith were descendants of Sith who crashed on the planet Kesh 5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. They lived and trained for those 5,000 years until they were eventually found by an ancient sentient Sith training sphere called Ship. They began to fly missions with Ship and eventually captured more warships, amassing a fleet. A lot happened with them that I'm going to skip over, but they eventually joined forces with Abeloth and took over Coruscant. Abeloth was an ancient and powerful darkside being. After much fighting with the Jedi, they were driven off Coruscant and went into hiding. Now while they were defeated temporarily, they were definitely still around. So what happened to them? In Star Wars Legacy, there's no mention of them, so we can assume that they have been dealt with, but we don't know how. Many fans speculate that this would have been part of the plot for the upcoming Star Wars trilogy, Sword of the Jedi. It would have definitely been cool to explore how they were defeated, but unfortunately, we never got those stories. Last on our list is, what happened to Nomi Sunrider? Nomi Sunrider is a pretty underrated character in my opinion. She lived in the days of the Old Republic, becoming a Jedi a little over 20 years before the events of Knights of the Old Republic. She became a Jedi after her husband was murdered. She did this in order to protect her daughter and the galaxy. Throughout her time as a Jedi, Nomi Sunrider was an instrumental part in helping the Jedi Order fight many threats, such as Sith Lords Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma. She eventually became Grand Master of the Jedi Order and worked to rebuild the Order. The last time we see her was during a Jedi conclave where she attempted to rebuild the Republic and the Jedi. Now cut to 10 years after this conclave, just 20 years after the war with Exar Kun, Mandalorians have begun to attack and invade the galaxy. Revan, a young Jedi Knight, wanted the Jedi to fight the Mandalorian invaders. However, the Jedi Council refused, stating that they should not wage war on the Mandalorians because the Mandalorians were not yet attacking the borders of the Republic. They were also afraid of the effect that the war might have, afraid that this could potentially cause a new generation of Jedi to turn to the dark side. Now, it never sat right with me that the selfless Nomi Sunrider would share the Council's belief. I feel like from everything I've read with her, she'd be the first person to jump into that situation and help the Jedi. However, there's no mention of her being on the Jedi Council in either Knights of the Old Republic 1, 2, nor in the Knights of the Old Republic comic series. So where was she? She seemingly just disappeared. Did she die before the war? That doesn't really make sense because we know that she was at the Onderon Cutoff, a battle that took place during the latter part of the Mandalorian War. So we know that she was alive during the Mandalorian Wars, but we don't know why she, being the Grand Master of the Order, didn't affect the war more, or didn't sway the Council to help Revan. We also don't know what happened to her after the Mandalorian Wars. It's very possible that she died during the war, which may have been why she isn't there afterwards. But we don't know for sure. Now, some of this was going to be explored in a novel that had the working title Mandorla. The story would have developed the relationship between Nomi and Nomi Sunrider and involved a resurgent threat from Sith and Mandalorian forces. It would have been set right before the events of KOTOR 1, so it probably would have answered some of the questions on our list. Now, I know there are a lot of unanswered questions in the expanded universe, and I only talked about 5 today because I wanted to dive deep into each one. Hopefully one day I'll make another video in the future where I talk about more unanswered questions and storylines. But what are your guys' thoughts on these unanswered questions, and which ones would you like to get answered the most? Thank you all so much for watching, and may the Force be with you all.